idea that she was still available at number 10 made the people in the Fever front office, I mean, we know who that is. It's Amber Cox, it's Steph White, it's Kelly Krauskopf. It really made them feel like they needed to take advantage of the situation and the player. And, even though I don't want to get into a lot of the off.
That reaction wasn't from a typical basketball analyst, it was real shock, like someone suddenly yelling while watching alone as the Indiana Fever made a very confusing pick in the draft. At number 10, they chose Raven Johnson, a 5 feet 9 inches point guard from South Carolina, even though she became their third point guard on a team that clearly needed more size, which made the decision even more surprising.
College, the year was 2023. It was the women's NCAA tournament, and Iowa was facing off against South Carolina. And Raven Johnson, wide open at the three-point line, gets waved off by Caitlin Clark. Raven Johnson really took that to heart. She even talked about it recently.
It was probably Caitlin Clark. And look at how far Caitlin Clark is playing off of Raven Johnson. Caitlin Clark, left side. She doesn't even look at her, waves her hand as if to say, I don't care about you. I'm not defending you. That's one reason I hate the internet now. Because of that situation, like I got bashed, I got bullied. I wanted to.
This was the moment that really defined the college rivalry. During the March 2023 NCAA tournament game between Iowa Hawkeyes women's basketball and South Carolina Gamecocks women's basketball, Caitlin Clark showed no respect for Raven Johnson's shooting, even waving her off from about 15 feet away and signaling to her teammates that she wasn't a threat. The clip went viral, and Raven Johnson later shared that she faced heavy online criticism and had to isolate herself, but she used that moment as motivation, returned for a fifth year, and greatly improved her three-point shooting. However, the confusing part about the Indiana Fever's decision is not about her talent, because she is clearly skilled, a strong defender, and has championship experience, but whether she actually fits what the team needs right now.
And they signed Myisha Hines-Allen, who is 6'1". Now, Myisha Hines-Allen is strong. She is definitely going to be having your back. She's a very Sophie Cunningham type enforcer player, but she is again 6'1", which, other than AB and Mo Billings, they don't have a lot of length, and Mo Billings is 6'4". So ideally, I was really hoping that Indiana would go out and draft some.
If you look at the teams the Indiana Fever are up against, the need becomes obvious. The New York Liberty have serious size with players like Brianna Stewart, Jonquil Jones, Satu Sabauli, and Leonie Fibic, creating a lineup full of length. The Atlanta Dream also added more size in the draft, and the Washington Mystics focused heavily on bigger players too. Across the league, teams are clearly building around size and versatility. Indiana did add Myisha Hines-Allen, a 6 feet 1 inch physical presence similar in style to Sophie Cunningham, but she's not a true center. Outside of Aaliyah Boston and Alyssa Smith, both listed at 6 feet 4 inches, the team still lacks strong rim protection. So when they had the 10th pick, with bigger options like Medina Okote and Cody McMahon still available, the expectation was simple: add size and defense in the paint. Instead, they went in the opposite direction and picked another point guard at 5 feet 9 inches.
Up against the likes of teams like New York, who are big. Brianna Stewart, Satu Sabauli, Leonie Fibic, Jonquil Jones. Now Sabrina, she is 6 foot or 6'1", about the same size as Caitlin. So she isn't like an enormous monster or anything like that. But the rest of that team is big. The Atlanta Dream are big. And now the Mystics, all of their drafts are enormous. There's a lot of length that is being valued in the WNBA.
New York Liberty aren't just big, they're elite when it comes to size and talent. Brianna Stewart is always in the MVP conversation, and Jonquil Jones is a former MVP, giving them a powerful frontcourt that can defend everything and dominate smaller teams inside. When the Indiana Fever faced them in the playoffs last season, the difference in size was very clear. Caitlin Clark, at 6 feet, and Kelsey Mitchell, at 5 feet 8 inches, struggled to finish drives because of that size. The obvious solution isn't adding another smaller guard, but bringing in a player who can protect the rim, block or change shots, and compete for rebounds against bigger lineups. The Atlanta Dream understood this perfectly. They drafted Medina Okote at number 13, a 6 feet 5 inches player with real post skills and strong defensive potential, the exact type of player Indiana needed. And the surprising part is, she was still available when the Fever had the 10th pick.
Raven Johnson, I yelped. I actually yelped. I was sitting home by myself watching the draft, and I yelped. It's not because I hate Raven Johnson or anything. I just was shocked. I was very shocked. Raven Johnson is 5'9", and not only is she a point guard, she is now Indiana Fever's third point guard on the roster. And yes, That was an area where they did have a lot of people going down last season, but that was like a once in a lifetime thing to happen to the.
Raven Johnson now becomes the third point guard on the Indiana Fever roster, sitting behind Caitlin Clark and Lexi Hull. While the team did deal with injuries at the guard position last season, that was more of an unusual situation, not something you plan for with a high draft pick. Typically, depth like that is handled later in the draft or through free agency, not with the 10th pick, which is expected to bring in a key rotation player who fills a major need. For Indiana, that need was clearly interior defense and rebounding, not another guard who handles the ball. Looking at it from Johnson's side, it's also a tough situation. She just won a national championship with South Carolina Gamecocks women's basketball and has proven she's a winner. But now she joins a team where she's likely the third option at her position, behind one of the most ball-dominant players in the game. That raises real questions about how many minutes she'll actually get and what her path to meaningful playing time will look like early in her career.
If you guys are on a team together, this is the kind of stuff that gets ironed out. I mean, this is sports. Put on your big girl pants and get out there on the court, you know? That's just how I think about things. But this is more of a front office issue. I was giving the Indiana Fever a bit of the benefit of the doubt with their front office, as it did seem like they were building a.
Stephanie White tried to explain the decision by talking about winning, championship experience, and players who understand team chemistry, which all sound good, but they don't really answer the main concern. The real question is whether this move actually helps the Indiana Fever compete with top teams like the New York Liberty, Connecticut Sun, and Las Vegas Aces. Adding a 5 feet 9 inches point guard like Raven Johnson doesn't solve their biggest problems. It doesn't help defend players like Breanna Stewart in the post or compete with Jonquil Jones on rebounds, so it's hard to see how it addresses their biggest weaknesses.
But oh my gosh, the Mystics are enormous. And in the second round, the Indiana Fever did take Justine Pissott. She was a Vanderbilt get, but the Indiana Fever also could have taken Neepkins. And Neepkins ended up going to the Connecticut Sun at number 15. Now, do I think Raven Johnson is a better player than Neepkins? I think that Raven Johnson does add a lot to a team. But just as far as how the Fever built their squad, Neepkins, I think, would have fit a little better as a puzzle.
The Indiana Fever had several better options at that spot. Medina Okote was still available at number 10, a 6 feet 5 inches player with strong post skills and real rim protection, and the Atlanta Dream grabbed her at 13, even though they were already a big team, showing they understand how important size is in today's game. Then right after Indiana's pick, Cody McMahon went to the Washington Mystics at 11, bringing 6 feet 3 inches size along with shooting range and defensive versatility. Marta Suarez was also still available, and even Sarah Tebayasu could have made more sense as a bigger wing defender. In short, Indiana had multiple choices that could have helped fix their biggest issue, but instead they went with the one option that didn't address their need for size and interior defense.
She has some perimeter ability. She can shoot from deep. She's a pretty quality stretch 3-4 shooter, so it does kind of fill a role for the Indiana Fever if she does make the team, because I don't even know who actually will be making this team. But, you know, I think about it, and I do wonder about Michaela Timpson. I could actually see Pissott making the Indiana Fever over Michaela Timpson this year. She averaged about 30 minutes a game and came away with 11 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 2.3 assists a game. Her and Michaela Blake's, and of course their other teammates, did lead the Vanderbilt team to their first Sweet 16 since.
Michaela Blake's and her teammates helped lead Vanderbilt to their first Sweet 16 since 2009. Showing the kind of impact strong players can have. To be fair to the Indiana Fever front office, they did try to address their need for size in the second round by selecting Justine Pissott at number 22. At 6 feet 4 inches, she brings shooting ability as a stretch forward, hitting 42% from 3 last season and leading the SEC in made threes, which makes her a valuable piece who could realistically earn a spot on the roster.
I knew it. And remember when Mick from Mick Talks Hoops said it was going to be Olivia Miles? I think he did change his mind, but I really wanted him to put a wager down because I knew I was going to win this one. Now, I don't exactly know if that was the best move as far as what they need, but I do think that AZ Fudd is a strong 3-point shooter, and I think her familiarity with playing with playing.
When you compare the Indiana Fever to other teams in this draft, the difference in direction really stands out. The Golden State Valkyries are building smart by looking overseas and finding value in less obvious places. The Washington Mystics fully committed to size, drafting Lauren Betts and Dominique Malona, both strong interior players who bring real presence in the paint. The Seattle Storm also focused on the future by selecting a young international prospect with high upside. All of these teams seem to have a clear plan and identity.
Actually the highest paid player right now in the WNBA with her 3-year salary combined, that is. But it does seem like the Seattle Storm are in complete rebuild mode. So they're looking, I mean, I think they could be looking to tank, to be completely fair, but they'll be needing to tank for a while because in the WNBA, they combine your last 2 years as far as how high your draft pick is. And they didn't do that bad last season, so they're going to be...
Here's the simple picture of the Indiana Fever roster as you laid it out. Caitlin Clark runs the offense, Kelsey Mitchell is the main scorer, Aaliyah Boston anchors the paint, Lexi Hull gives shooting on the outside, and Myisha Hines-Allen adds toughness and physicality. On paper, that's a strong core with real talent and clear offensive firepower. But the obvious gap is still there: rim protection and consistent interior defense. NaLyssa Smith is athletic and versatile, but not a true shot-blocking center, and while Boston is excellent, she can't protect everything by herself. Against teams like the Connecticut Sun, players such as Alyssa Thomas and DeWanna Bonner were able to dominate inside, showing exactly where Indiana struggled most. That's why the concern is less about guard depth and more about size and stopping power in the paint. From a team-building point of view, Indiana had been trending in a logical direction, bringing in a coach like Stephanie White, re-signing key pieces like Mitchell, and adding physicality with Hines-Allen. It all looked like a clear plan forming. The frustration comes because the draft pick didn't clearly address the biggest weakness in that plan. Could Raven Johnson still work out? Yes, her defense, competitiveness, and growth give her a real chance to contribute. But it also creates questions: fit, minutes, and whether she's the right use of a lottery pick when the roster already needed size. And in today's WNBA, that matters. Championship teams usually have real interior anchors like the Las Vegas Aces with Aya Wilson, or the Liberty with their frontcourt size. Indiana has offensive structure and star power, but still lacks that same defensive foundation in the paint. So the real issue isn't talent, it's fit. The Fever have pieces, but not the right balance yet, and that's what makes this draft decision so debated.